It is the year 2472, and the Earth has suffered a great calamity. Hundreds of years of popular culture have vanished. Without the sacred films and texts for guidance, civilization is devoid of anything cool. Then, 3 incubation chambers are unearthed, and from within, men from the time of the great blockbusters emerge. Now, through highly interesting conversations, they share invaluable insight about what once was. The movies, the shows, the comics, toys, and books. This is
the Hyperspace
Podcasting in the 25th century.
Welcome in, podcast pioneers, to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th century. The interwebs first, and yes, still only podcast that we know about. My name is Jared.
My name's Matt.
And my name is Mike.
All right, guys, on today's show, we're going to talk about collections.
Like debt collection?
Yes. Yes, I'm going to start a podcast about how the Columbia Music Company came after me when I was a senior in high school for abusing their 1 cent policy. Do you remember that back in the 20th century?
Yes. I didn't do it, but I had a friend who was just a gangster with that.
Oh, man, you would like tape a penny to this mailer, and you would get 12 CDs or cassettes for a penny, but you were locked into buying an album at full price, which for a CD was about $75 for basically the rest of your natural life once a year. Yeah, that was...
They also had it that if you signed up a friend, you would get extra CDs.
Yes.
And I did that where I signed up a friend and I gave him like a couple CDs for letting
That's
him use his...
That's what my friend was doing. He just hustled everybody.
Man, that thing... I got that, the Columbia, I guess it was the Columbia Music Club, and
there was an RCA too.
BMG, yeah.
I remember, BMG.
I did both of them, and I think got letters from both of them eventually.
You remember how there were certain CDs, cassettes. It wasn't a problem with CDs, but with cassettes, like some looked like the ones you bought in the store, and some was just a picture of the album, like in the middle of the cover. Do you remember that?
I don't remember that, but I remember our mutual friend, Mike Larry, used to be upset that in his OCD-ness, the cassettes he got from those clubs sometimes didn't like look like the rest of his cassettes.
Yeah, because they I think what it was, they manufactured them themselves. I guess they had like a deal. Yeah. But instead of like doing the correct cover, they just took a picture of the album, put it on the...
Yeah, it's sometimes how you would get, a different looking cover from like the Sci-Fi Book Club or something. They'd have their...
Oh, no, I didn't know that.
Their own particular book art and all that.
Well, they also had... The books from those clubs are also like different sizes than all the other books.
Yes.
Which is why I never joined any of those, because that would have made me insane.
I joined the Sci-Fi Book Club just for the exclusive Star Wars hardcovers.
My friend doing the Columbia Music stuff, he never used his own name, but he had like him and like 3 of the houses to his like left, he had an agreement with, so he would use their address, but he all used fake names. So for like 4 homes in a row, all these, fake names were getting the Columbia Music deal. So he had like...
What was the advantage to having the fake name?
It just, they couldn't say it's him. It's like, well, who the hell is, Gregor P, Urine, or whoever his name is.
Yes. But yes, it was Gregor P. Urine.
IP Daily live here?
Yeah, exactly. That's what it was. It's like he'd have like a whole box of CDs. He'd be like, "Hey,
is Phil McCrevis here?"
Man, look, just what we're talking about probably sounds like Martian to any kid living today.
No
They're like,
CD?
Wait, what? You had to do what for music? Oh, you mean you just didn't go to YouTube and listen to it?
It came in the mail.
It was work, folks. And then for the dedicated fans, you had to track down the singles. And the bands I listened to, they were usually overseas singles. And
Singles, man.
like
Yes, the CD singles.
the heavy metal magazines had like the page where you would see like running free single. That's awesome. I don't have that. And then you'd order it. And once again, all that stuff on the internet.
I will still go down rabbit holes sometimes because, like Mike was saying, the Beastie Boys they have countless EPs and CD singles out there that I don't even know. I don't even know they exist yet, but I will find them and occasionally, go down an eBay rabbit hole looking for some, and then I'll have to stop and say, no, I can't. I'm not going to pay.
I did that all real time when it was actually coming out.
Man.
I mean, after all, Jared, who in their right mind has the time to spend collecting stuff like that or anything and build up a huge collection? Who has the time?
Well, I think we're going to be talking to someone like that this evening.
Oh, yes.
And you will meet him very soon. Because tonight, we're going to be talking to my friend Brian in our Transmissions Hyperspace interview about his Star Wars collection. And guys, for those of you who don't usually listen to the show on YouTube, there is going to be a visual element to it this week, not just our super shiny animation that we usually do. We are going to be putting pictures of Brian's collection up as we talk about it during the interview. So if you're interested in what his collection looks like, definitely check out our YouTube channel and see this amazing collection for yourself.
Let me tell you, I got a small preview of that collection. Just a few pictures he sent before we started recording. And my mind is blown just by seeing these few pictures. I can't wait to talk to him tonight.
Well, I mean,
I can't either.
Why should we wait? Why don't we just get right into it?
Can anybody hear me? We found something.
Transmissions. The hyperspace interview.
Transmission commencing.
Today on Transmissions, the hyperspace interview, we have a man who for 40 years has been accumulating Star Wars ephemera, toys, vehicles, different kind of merchandise, autographs, etc. Half of his house is a literal Star Wars museum. And tonight we are going to talk to him about how that came to be. He also happens to be a friend of mine for many, many years. Please welcome to the show my pal, Brian. Brian, welcome.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me on today.
Brian, nice to meet you, man. Unbelievable collection.
Oh, well, thanks. I'm glad you all got to see some pictures beforehand. That gives you a good frame of reference for what we're going to talk about today and everything.
So, those listening at home, you have no idea the scale and scope of what this man has accumulated and accomplished. He sent us a handful of pictures, and I've been literally staring at them all day. And I feel like I'm looking at pictures of a museum, and that just keeps going and going. It's absolutely mind-blowing.
Hopefully by the time you hear this, we will have posted some of those on our social media.
Yeah, I'll cherry pick and put a few up. It's just unbelievable to see.
So, Brian, I guess we'll start at the beginning. Can you remember your first Star Wars toy?
Yes, I do remember. I got an action figure. It was a Hammerhead from the Star Wars line. I probably got it back in 79 or 80. It was right before The Empire Strikes Back came out is when I started getting some Star Wars toys and things.
Hammerhead in the blue
Yes.
unitard.
Oh, yes. And,
Yeah, that was one of my favorites as a kid.
and those
Hammerhead.
limbs that look like tree limbs.
Yeah, he kind of had a Groot thing going on there.
Yeah, he did.
Yeah, he did. The first Groot.
And he has made he's made somewhat of a resurgence recently in the Clone Wars. The blue-wearing unitard hammerhead.
Oh yeah.
So that was your first figure. Did you have a favorite classic Kenner action figure growing up?
Probably one of my favorites growing up would have been the Bespin Fatigue Luke. I loved it. It came with a gun and a lightsaber. I mean, what more could you want?
Wasn't that one of the first ones that came with like an actual lightsaber as opposed to it being in the arm?
Yes, it was the first one to come with an actual lightsaber
that's great
as opposed
trivia.
to one that slides out.
Yes,
So-
and oddly, a yellow lightsaber.
Yes, it came with the yellow one, and it's funny because later on when they released a Luke Jedi, it came with a blue lightsaber. Well, that wasn't right either because we all know that he had a green one. So
Yes, and they switched it over to a green one
Yeah.
later.
and it's funny because I got it for Christmas, and I'm at my grandmother's house, and I'm going, "What is this? The blue lightsaber? What kind of garbage is this, man? It's supposed to be green." And it prompted me to write this letter to Kenner, and I sent them. I sent them this letter. And I said,
Sent
"My
them a
Luke
letter.
came with a blue lightsaber, and I want a green one. And then here are a bunch of these proofs of purchases." I threw it into the envelope. I said, "I also need these weapons that I've lost." And I
That's
tell you
smart.
what, they sent me a pack about 2 or 3 months later of a crap ton of weapons.
Wow.
I mean, there must have been 30 or 40 weapons in that pack.
man, if I had
And
known
I
it
got my
just
green
took a letter.
lightsaber.
So
Yeah.
it worked?
Yeah, it actually worked.
If I had known that, I would have written them immediately. I lost half my weapons and always just chalked it up as, well, that's going to be it.
Oh, yes.
Oh man, I'm looking at some of the pictures that Brian sent earlier, and the one that grabs my eye right away is the Tatooine Luke
Oh,
with
yes.
the telescopic lightsaber. That was my very first action figure I ever had for Star Wars, and I remember losing that lightsaber because I had taken it out of its telescoping arm, and I
Yes.
lost it at preschool or kindergarten or one of that, and I remember going home so depressed with my lightsaberless Luke.
His
And,
empty arm slot.
his empty
Oh,
arm,
yes.
and you couldn't do anything about it. But it's unbelievable to see what he has accumulated. Now, Brian, I'm looking at some stuff right now. Now, there's unbelievable amount of curios and display cases that he has, but as we'll get into all the different kinds of things that you kind of sought out and how you kind of put your stuff together. But the original figures that you had as a kid, is that what I'm looking at in one case? They're all your original figures, or have you just kind of like?
Oh no, there's
No, I have to
that's
ask because I don't know.
there is a story here.
There
This is
are many
perfect.
stories here.
Okay, I will set it up and say.
Yeah, why don't
Yes,
you
please.
steer me down this windy road of collector
So listen
conundrums?
now, and this was kind of a shared journey between me and Brian again. The mid '80s, Star Wars Kenner. It was in decline. They started to be phased out. And, Star Wars was kind of entering that hibernation phase, the dark times, as we call it.
Yes.
And G.I. Joe had pretty much taken over our lives by then. I do recall standing on Brian's back porch, destroying Star Wars figures with firecrackers and a BB gun.
Oh, yes.
Wow.
Yes. As a matter of fact, there are two major destructive moments that just stick out in my mind in relation to Star Wars figures. One is that I had a snow speeder that I got one year and for Christmas, and I set it out on the back porch when I was in destructive mode and put firecrackers in it, and the thing burnt into a flat piece of plastic. It was just black charred plastic.
That must have been one of the wingmen that Luke was covering then.
Yes, it was one of Luke's wingmen. He got hit by an AT-AT. So, and then the other one hurts a little more. But my reasoning at the time was, oh, it's an oddball, it's a defect, so we'll blow it up. And that was a blue snaggletooth. Which, now this may sound like a lot, but there were only 50,000 of those made, and compared to some of the other numbers on figures, which are in the hundreds of thousands a piece. So yeah, that blue snaggletooth got shot many
So-
times.
Tell me, ballpark today, blue snaggletooth in decent condition. What are you looking at?
$200-300.
I mean, I can't blame you. We all did that stuff, but who would know?
I mean, by that time you had to make room for the GI Joes. The GI Joes were coming down the pike.
Mhm.
I
mean,
Star
they caused
Wars,
their own epic battles.
Yeah, and Star Wars was yesterday's news at that point. How about we take a leap forward? Well, before we get started there, do you have original figures left in your collection that you can point to and say, those were mine from when I was a kid?
That would be really hard. I don't know that I could, to be honest.
Do you
and the
think
reason
you have
is,
some knocking around in your collection?
I probably do. And I also may have some that aren't in the the main display case. They may be in a diorama somewhere or something like that.
Okay, so then let me give you a starting point then. At what point in your life did you start to say, I'm going to collect this stuff. I'm actually going to make an active effort to start collecting? Because if you were a kid and you were destroying stuff, I mean, you had fun with it, but it wasn't the world to you. So when did it become the world?
Okay, so 25 years ago, in 1995, it was kind of early in the year, and my sister's boyfriend, John, was hanging out over here, and we got to talking. I don't know if he was waiting on her to get home or something, and we hadn't really done much together or anything. We occasionally just passed each other in the hallway at the house and said hey or whatever, and that was about it. And we got to talking, and he's like, do you have any old Star Wars toys? And I was like, yeah, I've got some of those. He goes, will you sell them to me? And I was like, I got to thinking, I'm like, no. And he goes, well, why don't you start collecting? Let's go dig them out. And so I dug them out, and I had 60 or 70 figures that I didn't destroy. I was actually pretty particular about destroying figures. I tried to, except for that blue snaggletooth, I tried to keep one of each. So it was really just duplicates and stuff that I was blowing up. And we started going through some stuff. And what's funny is, just a few months before, I'd gotten rid of some vintage boxes and things that some ships came in, and a couple of play sets and things, but which kind of hurt, because later down the road I had to get those things again. But
rebuy them.
Yeah, rebuy. But no, it touched off something in me, and I was just like, man, we just got to go with this. And John and I started searching the Southeast for Star Wars toys. That's
now, was
really
this
how it all began.
Was this before eBay?
Yeah, this is right before eBay. As a matter of fact, the first carded figure purchase I made was this. It was a Vader on a Return of the Jedi card in like an alternate pose, and I got it at a garage sale for like $15. And then the lady had a couple of others, and I think John bought one, and I may have bought two of them at the time. But yeah, and that kind of that's how it started. Going to garage sales, and then we went to a toy show, and I was in college. I was a broke college student, and I somehow spent $1,000 on Star Wars toys at this toy show at the Jacobs building on the wrong side of town. And they used to do a toy show there every year, and these people come, and vintage Star Wars toys were pretty hot, at those shows.
Well,
so.
That's also when they were handing out credit cards on college campuses like candy.
Oh,
yes, that is true. And I had no restraints when it came to buying Star Wars at the time.
In 1995, that was also the start of the relaunched Power of the Force figures.
Right.
Did you jump into that with both feet?
Oh, yeah. Both feet. I collected, I've got all those, and they weren't actually very good sculpts. They had all these guys all jacked up like they were they were smaller, the same scale as the vintage figures, but they were
I remember
jacked
the Luke
up
specifically had the big pectorials.
Yeah, yeah.
They were jacked up like He-Man or something.
And the big V-net, the V-net shorty robe.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was just like... Yeah, he was busting out of that thing. And Han, too. Like his shirt was all around his biceps and everything. It's
man,
like, what's happening here?
It was completely ridiculous, those figures. But, man, I was like, all right, we got some new Star Wars figures. Let's get them all, and it's been kind of chaos ever since in buying. I don't have everything that has come out over the last 25 years, but boy, I probably got about 90% of it as far as action figures are concerned, or more. So.
It's amazing. Have you ever had this entire collection appraised?
I've done my own appraisal of it. I mean, the thing is, my insurance company wanted to, send somebody out here to appraise it, and then do a extra rider on my insurance, and I was like, who are they going to send? Because, I mean, I'm as qualified as any of these fools to do this. So I ended up when I went with a collectible insurance company, and they just let me put my own valuation on it. So.
And you told them $3 billion.
Yeah. No, I was actually I was very fair in that evaluation. I didn't inflate it. As a matter of fact, they kept escalating it every year, and I'm like, my collection hasn't grown in value that much every year, and so I had to have them dial it back because I was getting where I was paying too much.
I mean, folks, I'm going to assume that throughout the United States there are avid collectors, but this collection has to rank on a top 100 in the country scale. It is huge. It is enormous. Have you ever connected with any other collectors to compare your size?
Well, there's a really prominent collector out of Seattle who actually writes books on these things. And
is this Gus Lopez?
Yeah, it was Gus Lopez.
Okay.
And oh man, his stuff. His collection was amazing. He had a Death Star prop. It was the Death Star used in A New Hope.
Wow.
He pulled it out of a dumpster.
What?
Yeah. So he
out
would
of a
go
dumpster. The actual Death Star model he pulled out of a dumpster?
Yeah.
Yes.
God, I hope he didn't pay for it. I hope he just ran.
He would go to Tunisia and pull stuff out of the desert and send, crates of stuff back. I mean,
okay, well, we're not going to go into that level of insanity. But as far as the above average collector, this collection has to rank somewhere on the top scale.
Yeah, it's a pretty decent sized collection. I know people that probably have more new stuff, and there's some people that I know that have more vintage stuff, but I'd say the vintage side of it's pretty good, as far as, that's concerned. I don't want to blow it out of proportion. There's some really big and some really nice collections out there that would definitely overtake mine.
But folks, it's not just toys. I mean, his house has, it looks like, if I'm not mistaken, the whole Burger King collection of cups. He's got the collector plates. He's got pins. He's got everything under the sun Star Wars. It looks like to me the majority of your house, from what I saw in the video that Jared shot, most of your house is a Star Wars memorabilia museum, basically.
Yeah, it goes down the stairwell, and then I've got about, 1,200 square feet of Star Wars stuff in my basement.
Wow.
There's some dead space, for couches and, that. But outside of that, it's pretty much all on display, as you've seen in the videos and the pictures.
Brian, I'm going to ask you a very specific question.
Sure.
That everybody is probably wondering. Does your wife like Star Wars?
Yes, she does. And now, she's not the fan that I am, but she does love watching the movies with me most of the time. Although she won't watch Revenge of the Sith because I took her to the theater and we watched it like 8 times or something, and she got tired of it. But outside of that one, she's really cool about watching them and just hanging out, and she doesn't mind having it all around. Oh, and she didn't really care for the life-size Watto that I picked up recently. That was one of those things where she just was like, I don't like it. It's ugly. And he was mean, and was like, well, it's cool looking because it's life-size.
The life-size Watto.
Yes.
Yeah, but I mean, come on, Brian. Did you really need to be sleeping with it?
Well,
Get it out of the bed.
I did fall asleep on the couch down here with it.
Oh man.
It should be said that the upstairs of Brian's house is a fairly normal suburban residence.
Yeah, it's more or less Star Wars free up there, except for a few small things, lurking around here and there. Oh, and the Star Wars obsession goes. It hit our wedding too. We used music from the Star Wars movies. We actually got some members of the 501st to come, and we had Vader there and some stormtroopers and things, and wandering around mingling with guests.
That's
so that was a lot of fun. So she was a good sport about that.
So in your collection, there has to be some favorites of yours that you have. What are some of your top favorites that you walk by and you're like, yes?
Probably one of them is my yak face. Both of my yak faces. Yak face was only sold there were a few in Canada, and they were sold over in the UK and in Europe. And man,
why didn't we get them? What makes yak face so?
I don't know. It was one of those weird things that they just didn't sell it here for some crazy reason.
Yak face was part of the Power of the Force line, which was, is that correct?
Yeah, they sold him Tri-Logo and Power of the Force line.
And
so
I think
that was the last gasp for the Star Wars line.
Yeah,
and I think I read that he wasn't brought here just for lack of interest.
Yeah, that's very likely because it was the last figure released of the original line, and I didn't even know about Yak Face till I started collecting. I had no idea.
In the 90s.
Yeah, in the 90s, when I started collecting is when I found out about it. And I really, the Power of the Force line, I remember going to KB Toys and, Toys R Us, and you'd see these, big metal bins, and they'd be filled up with Star Wars figures that were all Power of the Force, and they all had the little coin and everything. Well, the joke's on us, the people that didn't buy them, because those are some of the most valuable figures in the entire line, outside of the original 12.
And in those discount bins, they were like $1.
Yeah.
Or something.
Yeah, $3 or $4 figure was like $1.
I would.
Oh my God.
I would walk by those on my way to the G.I. Joe section.
Yes, I did that too. I only bought one of those, and it was a Han Carbonite, and I lost the block, but I still had the Han.
Okay.
So,
what about the coin?
I lost the coin too.
And you call yourself a collector? I think this is over. This conversation's over.
We see here there's a lot of new stuff, and I'd like your opinion because as a collector, what is really what has engaged you from the new stuff? Obviously the vintage stuff from the 70s and 80s, that's always gonna, that holds a special place in our hearts, obviously. But for you as a collector, what has impressed you from the stuff post 95 to 2020?
Of the last probably 10 years or so, Hasbro has put out a vintage collection. And these figures are generally articulated more. And then they have the vintage style packaging, which just appeals to my senses, because I always felt like Star Wars should have always been packaged that way. I felt like they should never have changed it, that everything should have been done that way. And that may seem a little weird and not with the times, but it's so iconic, and it looks so clean compared to some of this packaging and stuff that I really love it. And one of the coolest things that they've come out with, and it arrived last year, but it was a crowdfunding exercise by Hasbro through their HasLab arm, was the Jabba sail barge. That thing, is 3 or 4 feet long, houses 125, 30 figures. It's super detailed. It's just absolutely amazing. And I have one of those on display. I think I sent you guys pictures of it that you
Yeah,
can post it if you want.
You took a video of it.
Yeah, I
Send
did a
it
little
to us.
video of that because I mean, there's just so much there, and I used a mix of vintage and non-vintage figures to fill it out, and that's one thing they've done a good job of with the newer stuff is adding figures that we didn't have. Because the original vintage line only had 97 figures if you count the blue snaggletooth. So and then there's some variations and things in there, but 97 figures was it. So, it's kind of nice. There's a lot of, figures they could fill out with.
I remember when they released Tarkin in the 90s. That was a big deal.
That was a huge deal.
Because it was like, finally, we're getting a Tarkin. And
what a strange thing not to include in the original line. He was such a big character, too.
Did you know, as an attempt to revitalize the line right before it died, they were going to, they'd actually made some mock-ups, but they were going to bring in Grand Moff Tarkin, and they had this storyline where he had survived the Death Star. And it was going to be Tarkin and some new vehicles and stuff. It didn't get past prototype because this was like, I guess it was right around Power of the Force, and I guess so it never got to production. But we almost did get a Tarkin out of that original line, but they killed the line altogether. I thought that was an interesting idea. They tried to incorporate a new story to continue, because I guess that was one of the reasons that the figure line died was, you had 3 movies and that was it.
Yeah, and Lucas wasn't going to just jump into another. He wasn't making any more for a while, and that's kind of, I could understand how that would be rough on Kenner's business model.
Yeah, and then, they came out with those droids and Ewoks cartoons as a way to try to resuscitate some of the toy sales and things, but
they didn't really match the previous figure. I know that when they released Boba Fett, that was the only one they took, like the original Boba Fett figure and jammed it in a package.
They did the same thing with the A-Wing pilot too.
Oh yeah, that's right.
It was thrown in there.
And not even C-3PO and R2-D2 look the same. Those were like new molds from the cartoon.
And, that's a whole interesting, end of collecting vintage stuff too. I mean, those are kind of hard to find, and they're kind of getting expensive. I mean,
isn't there one that was only released in Brazil? Like
Vlix. Yeah, those are.
Those are like,
you're gonna pay a mint to get one of those things.
Unreachable. Yeah.
Yeah, that's not even mine.
How many of those do you have?
0.
I didn't see him in the barge. What's going on here?
Yeah, there wasn't a slot that expensive. You get one of those things on card if you can even find one, it'd be 20 grand probably, or something stupid.
I don't mean to go branch off, but just out of curiosity, is there a problem with like people selling fakes?
Yes, I mean, that's part of collecting, and identifying weapons are the worst. People trying to sell fake weapons, and
I imagine that'd be pretty easy to slip through, wouldn't it?
It is if your eye's not trained for it, and one of the things, most of there's like a float test, to see if weapons will float or not, and then there's you can look at them sometimes. The colors, like somebody try to pass off a Leia blaster that's gray. Well, those don't exist.
I mean, come on. Gray blasters, everyone knows that.
Well, with 3D printing now, I wonder if that's where people are starting to experiment in some of these, counterfeits, where they can just 3D print the exact specs.
I'm sure that they are.
But man,
that would open up a whole new deal.
But you still have, density issues with the plastic and just how they look. It's really, the coloring of them and those sorts of things. I mean, and there's websites out there. There's the Imperial Gunnery that is dedicated to ferreting out fakes by having a database of all these pictures of weapons and what they should look like. And then fakes next to them show what they shouldn't look like.
And do have pictures of bodies of people who tried to sell some fakes.
Yeah, I got a couple buried out in my backyard.
So I see in this vast collection, you have a lot of boxed figures, it looks like. Have these been
Yes.
sent off and certified?
Of the wall, probably about half of them. I think I have over 200 mint on card figures, and the wall there's over 130 on the wall, and probably about 65 or 70 of those have been graded. The rest of them, I just put them in acrylic so it would look nice. So you can buy these acrylic cases, and they just have a little sliding bottom, and you put the thing in there, and there it is. But it makes for a really nice display, and the wall is one of these things that John and I aspired to when we were starting to collect. And the wall is considered to be one of each figure on card. So
From the vintage.
From the vintage line. And there are multiples of some figures on mine. I don't know if you saw the Darth Vader picture where you have Vader on a Star Wars card and an Empire card and a Jedi card and then another pose on a Jedi card and then a tri-logo card that's from the UK or from Europe and then a Power of the Force card and one with the coin. So, I've actually got a full run of Vader figures, and I kind of made it a point to get those because I just always liked that figure.
Yeah, they never changed that mold, did they?
No, they didn't. They just left it. The only difference on it is,
there's a Darth Vader floating around in the Atlantic Ocean.
There's probably more than one.
From Mike, was that? I remember you told that story on a podcast last year. That was your Vader just got swept out to sea by your dumb friend.
Yeah, he had it for like 3 seconds in his hand, and then he let it go.
Oh, man.
I'm watching his sail barge video right now. Was that a Raiders Golden Idol I saw in there?
Yes, that is. That is. I found that somewhere, and I just threw it in there. I thought, oh, this will be fun. And the crate that's in there, and a couple of oddball things, a couple little Easter eggs to see when you're watching that video. So,
what would be your favorite piece that is like Kenner figure related in your collection?
There's probably more than one.
It could be an autograph or a poster or...
Yeah, there's actually a few things. I really like my Lego Death Star. I think that's a really cool toy.
Oh, it's outrageous. That detail's sick.
Yeah, and then the Star Destroyer too. Both of those are just outstanding. And I've got the Falcon, but I haven't put it together yet. It's just sitting there in a box for the last 2 years. But there's a couple of things. I've got a Jedi poster that has a lot of autographs on it. Mark Hamill, Carrie Fisher, Billy D. Williams, Warwick Davis, Peter Mayhew, Kenny Baker, all these guys, that play these iconic characters. And
Did you get it from them personally?
Yes. All those guys I met to get that poster signed, which is really cool. And then a couple of years ago, I picked up some one-sheets, theatrical one-sheets for re-releases of Jedi Empire and A New Hope. And The New Hope has actually a little banner across the bottom of it that says Revenge of the Jedi on it, because it was a promo before Jedi came out. So that was kind of neat. But they're all re-release posters that were, early re-release posters from the early 80s. And they all have the proper markings and stuff. I mean, they're legitimate theatrical one sheets that I picked up from this lady. And then I have just a regular Empire poster signed by Irving Kershner, which that's one of my favorites.
Yeah, Brian got me an Irving Kershner autograph too.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. And it was personalized to me, which was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
And, director of my favorite Star Wars movie. That was, and the fact that he's no longer with us is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I really like that, that just the fact that he got to meet the director of probably the greatest Star Wars movie is just, that was so cool.
So, Brian, which toys do you think were from the original movies your favorite? Do you think was it A New Hope? Was it Empire? Or was it Jedi that you liked the best?
Of the toys, oh man, when I was a kid, that AT-AT was just, that was the toy. I mean, that was the ultimate Star Wars toy. I mean, even though I had a Death Star, which was really cool, I kept crashing my X-Wing into it, and it kept breaking and falling apart and all this stuff. But man, that AT-AT, I got so much play. And I do have my original AT-AT complete from when I was a kid.
I bought one. I think I bought it when I was 30. I think, Jared, I think you have my AT-AT now, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, you gave that to me, and it sat in Hannah's room for many years.
Good. Yeah, the Empire toys.
Got lipstick and makeup on it now.
Yeah, those Empire toys are great.
Oh man, I love those things. And like the turret and Probot play sets. It came with the probe droid, the turret, and you could knock the probe droid off, and the Imperial attack base with all the collapsing things, and the Falcon. Oh, the original Falcon. That was such a great piece.
Yeah, I had that. I got that on Christmas. I remember waking up and that thing sitting there.
Yeah, me too. Christmas morning.
They used the mold for that till they broke it. They literally broke the mold when they were doing the more modern run, and they had to redo the Falcon completely. And they did one which is a fantastic toy, the Legacy Falcon, and it's huge.
Yeah, it's the big one, right?
Oh man, it is. It's awesome.
Isn't it to scale with the figures, like actual?
Yeah, it's a little more to scale. You can actually has 4 cockpit places instead of 2, and there's all kinds of little chambers and stuff inside of it.
Did you ever wonder what was behind that cardboard wall in the Falcon? Did you always want to get in
plastic,
there?
Man.
What's in there?
I didn't ever dig mine out, but yeah.
I think that's where Han and Leia were doing it.
Doing what? Making sparks.
Yeah, exactly. Well,
sure, Leo.
Sure, Leia. And didn't you help our friend Charlie, who we've also heard on the podcast? He reached out to you to help complete one of his Falcons that he had, one of those big.
Yeah,
Falcons.
Actually, I got him the shell.
Okay.
The shell for it. Yeah.
Nice.
And it was missing the escape pod and some pieces and stuff, but I think he was going to 3D print some of that and like some landing gear. I found some landing gear too at one point. But
that Falcon is really a cool toy. And it's got the ramp that comes down automatically with the lights and the sounds, and
I love that's my favorite feature on that thing.
One of my favorite things was I was over at your house when Hannah was very young. I have a video of this somewhere, and she is like looking at that Falcon, and I think me and you both were like really had strong pucker factor as she was like poking around in it, like because she was only like 1.5 or something, and she was all hands and feet and touching but that was really neat.
So, Brian, at this stage of the collection, how active are you in looking for new stuff? Are you content? Or are you always out for something? Does it become like you're more focused on finding something particular, or is it always just a wide net that you're just hoping to cast out and bring stuff in?
Are you like the Eye of Sauron, always searching?
Well, the search thing is weird. I'm on and off with it. It's like I'm always on. It's always in the back of my mind, but sometimes I'm more active than others. And right now I'm kind of in a down phase with all the social distancing and things that are going on. There's not many garage sales to go hit or anything like that, and I don't like buying off of eBay a whole lot. And then there's this other factor of, as far as vintage stuff is concerned, I've gotten to the point where there's not a whole lot that I feel like I need. There's a few things here and there, and I don't want to go down this rabbit trail of, I want to get that. Oh, it's $700-800, and then, oh wait, I like this too. It's $1,000. It can just add up really fast, and I'm just trying to stay out of that right now. trying to check myself a little bit. But as far as the spending is concerned, and I also like to have a little bit of money stashed for collections, because what'll happen is this has happened a few times to me where somebody will contact me out of the blue, like my dad. He had a guy that he knew that lived in a town near here, and he has a Star Wars collection and he's wanting to sell it. And I, here's his number, give him a call. And I go and I, spend $1,000, buying Star Wars toys off this guy. And then, when that happens, I have some rules about buying collections. I have to be able to fund it with what I buy. So, basically what that means is I'll keep some of it, but whatever I keep, I've got to be able to pay for it, by selling some of the other stuff. And usually I don't sell stuff that I don't have already. I'll keep all the stuff I don't have, but then I'll take everything else. But I bought a truckload. It was a truckload I bought from this guy. And there's a lady in Cookeville that I've bought, stuff from a couple of times. I've probably bought over 70 carded figures from her, vintage, and kept a bunch of them and sold a bunch of them. Make my
Have
money
you ever
back.
been out somewhere and unexpectedly found something that was like, you were like, oh my gosh?
I've got 2 stories that would fit that bill really well. There was this, I went to Bag a Bargain, which was something put on by some girls club here in town, but it's like a rummage sale type thing. And they had one of these Legacy Falcons there, and I bought it. I saw it and it was $5 and I bought it, which is super cheap. Yeah.
For
The big
$5?
Falcon. Yeah. I was like, oh man, I'm
Was
grabbing
it
this
complete?
thing. It was mostly complete. I mean, it had almost everything. It was actually really nice shape. I'm like, who gave this up? Well, I got home and my friend Jennifer, who had gone to that event with me, we were sitting there and I was, oh yeah, let's check out this Falcon. And so I'm pulling it apart, checking what pieces are here missing or
It
there.
had gold bars in it.
Close.
It had a vintage blue snaggletooth in it.
Oh,
No
wow.
way.
Yeah. It was in the car, like in a hidden
They
compartment.
have like a
in there.
BB mark in its forehead.
No, this one was actually pretty nice.
Where was
Wow.
it? Where was it at?
It was in like a hidden compartment in the Falcon.
Wow.
You lost your mind right there, didn't you?
I did.
What is that
I
thing?
absolutely lost it.
What does a blue snaggletooth sell for?
$200 to $300.
Holy
And
cow.
you paid $5 for that Falcon.
Yeah, I sold the Falcon for like 50 later, before they started going really high. And
I remember seeing those in Walmart on clearance because I don't think they sold that well when they first came out.
they were $150 out of the gate. I mean, I bought mine at Toys R Us, and I ended up with I got a pretty good deal on mine because they gave me all these discounts and stuff because I was really nice to the cashier, and nobody had been nice to her that night. It was like when they released a bunch of Clone Wars stuff, and that Falcon came out that night too. It was a midnight thing, and I think some people were rude to her, and I was super nice, and she just gave me every discount possible. I think I got that for like 30% off or something. It was
Wow.
Yeah, on opening night. So,
Hear that, folks? Being nice pays.
yeah, and then the other one was I was at a garage sale, and I'll frequently ask if they have any old Star Wars toys. And, you get a lot of, yeah, I've got some, but I'm not selling them. Yeah, are you displaying them? No, I'm not doing that. I'll just have them in a box somewhere. And I'm like, come on. This one guy, I asked him, after asking his wife, his wife was like, no, we don't have any of that. And the guy had walked out, and I said, do you have any old Star Wars toys? And he goes, yeah, I think I got a couple up at the top of my closet. So he goes, and he's gone for like 5 minutes.
Just
and
have them laying around.
and he comes back, and this is just like 5 minutes from my house. He comes back with this baggie, and I see a figure in it or something, and it has like the card backs in it. Well, turns out all these figures were attached to the card, so they were all mint on card figures as they were sold originally, and one of them was a 12-back Chewbacca.
Explain the 12-back thing.
Okay, so when the Star Wars figures were first released at the stores, there were 12 of them. And so a 12-back had the 12 figures listed on the back of the card. And then, it goes on. There was a 20 back and a 21 back and a 32 back, and it goes on and on and on and on. Till they, got to the end. Well, this guy had let's see, I think it was a Power of the Force B-Wing pilot, which isn't that great, and a Return of the Jedi Leia battle poncho, and they had this 12-back Chewie. So I offered the guy $50. He said, deal. I took him and got out of there as fast as I could. Because that Chewie, he was $400 or $500.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then, I got it graded, and it graded out pretty decent. So, it's probably $1,000 figure.
Wow, picking through the diamonds in the rough there.
Yeah, no kidding.
I just found my Chewbacca from when I was a kid. He was in a box. I had moved recently, and he was stuffed in the bottom of a box, just sitting there with his arms like this. I'm like, that's Chewie. That was my Chewie I had when I was a kid. Real quick, but you mentioned how you turn over some of your collection to fund expanding the collection.
Yeah.
Was there anything you gave up where you're like, you sold it and you regret it, or you're like, it was tough to give up, but you did it?
Back in the broke college days, there were a few times where I overextended myself and had to sell a few pieces that I didn't want to sell. But not in recent memory. Most of my regrets are not being able to execute the purchase of collections. There's one in particular that happened back in 1999. I was about to get married to my first wife, and the breakup had nothing to do with Star Wars. But although I should have, instead of saving money for the honeymoon, I should have probably bought the Star Wars collection, because it would have been worth a lot more money now than it was then. I had $4,000 or $5,000, and this guy offered to sell me his collection for about $3,000, and he had probably, I don't know, 70 or 80 carded figures, but he also had, I think, 3 Star Wars carded Boba Fett's, which each go for probably $2,000 to $5,000 a piece, depending on the condition and things. And he had a bunch of 12 backs. He had boxed ships that I never even got to really look at. I mean, I went and looked at his collection, but I didn't dig through everything. I mean, he had a living room full of stuff just boxed up. And yeah, he wanted $3,000 for this whole collection. I couldn't pull the trigger because I knew I had to have the money for something else, and I could have probably done it probably could have gone on the trip without that money, but I couldn't risk it. And man, that hurts. That hurt, and it still bothers me to this day.
So it's the one that got away.
It is the one that got away, and it was a big one. I still don't have a Boba Fett on a Star Wars card because I won't spend that much money on one figure. So,
well, as a special treat for joining us today, we got you one.
Yeah, right. A picture of one, right?
Yeah. I printed it out, and
I do have the card back though for one. Somewhere along the way, I got a card back for one.
Well, maybe you can reconstruct it someday, and just have a facsimile on your shelf until the real one comes along.
Or maybe you'll buy like an AT-AT and
you'll
open it up, and there's one inside of it.
It'd be all wadded up in there.
That would be amazing.
Creased, but it'd be on card, and it would be there. Yeah, that's the one that got away, and that was super painful. The more I think about it, I try not to think about it really, but I'm very thankful for the collection that I have and that I've been able to accumulate over the years, and still adding. And I do have, like, the Watto was a recent addition. I also got some posters that were really cool. Like, one is it's some sort of foil or mylar based poster from like for the soundtrack that they sent to record stores and stuff to promote
it.
Yeah, to promote the soundtrack. And also got the life size R2D2 Pepsi cooler from this guy. That's a really an elusive concepts Jabba the Hutt, which is pretty good size.
Does the cooler work?
The cooler is just you just put ice in it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's
I do remember those at gas stations during the Phantom Menace.
Well, it's pretty
era.
cool though. Take it
Yeah.
to a picnic.
yeah. We host a Christmas party every year, and we thought about taking it upstairs and filling it with
Fill it
ice.
full of
and-
ice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Well, you don't want to risk damaging it, of course.
I know you got to be real careful. That dome is super fragile. I've already cracked it.
Oh, Brian.
Well, it's on the inner lip of it, so it's not like you can see it or anything.
You
It's
ruined it.
Yeah, it totally ruined it. Actually, that thing's in pretty good shape overall. It may have already been cracked. I just felt it when I picked it up.
Okay, now I got a quick question. In your opinion, what is the dumbest Star Wars figure?
Oh, the dumbest
That's a
Star
good
Wars figure.
question.
I was thinking the same thing.
Like, what is the one that's like, oh my gosh, why did they release this? It's ridiculous. No one cares about this guy.
As a kid,
Now, as an adult, because as an adult, your perspective is different from a kid. Kid, you
Right.
think like, characters are like, Princess Leia. Who cares about Princess Leia?
well, no, as a kid, I thought like the Rancor Keeper was kind of dumb.
Wow, really?
What's this big fat guy?
Yeah, that's true though. I mean, he's in it for 3 seconds. How are you gonna
Right.
play with him? Like,
You-
well, we're on Endor.
How
The
did
Rancor
that-
guy's with us?
How did they figure that guy, but not Tarkin?
Exactly. That's
No
exactly what I was
kidding.
thinking. Yeah. But as far as like modern stuff, I mean, there's not been any that just bother me off the top of my head. So, that just drive me nuts.
Did
Now,
Laura Dern, purple hair, get a figure?
yeah, she got a Black Series figure.
Black Series. That's even more insulting.
Yeah.
I hope they got the shade of purple right on her hair. Otherwise, it's unacceptable.
Constable Zuvio. That's
Oh,
one.
Constable
That's a waste of
Zuvio.
Constable
space.
Zuvio. Who is
That's like-
that?
Exactly.
He
He never
wa-
was in the movie.
He was the first figure released. He was like, wasn't he released like an early bird type of deal for The Force Awakens?
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember.
And then he swung from the pegs, as they say, for years afterwards.
What did he look like? Did he have like
what was that character? Who
did he
was
have a
that?
dome helmet on or
He
something?
had like
Yeah.
a wide brim sombrero
yeah,
looking.
he wasn't
hat.
even in the movie.
No, he
Exactly.
wasn't in the movie.
That's probably the dumbest figure ever made right there.
I think one of the things that's cool, like if I was to ever try to collect, I think I would try to just do the vintage because there's a finite number of them. I think
Yes.
the fact that it's just ever growing, it has to be like frustrating because it's like I will never ever have all of these. It's
Yeah.
like it's impossible. Like how many different clone troopers are there?
Right. There's a bazillion. Now, it's funny, though, you say that about a finite number of vintage figures because while there is a finite number, it feels sometimes like there's not. And what I mean by that is there are collectors out there that they go to these extraordinary lengths to find every different version of a Luke Skywalker. So you got your base, like a farm boy Luke Skywalker. You've got a double telescoping lightsaber. You've got a telescoping lightsaber. You got blonde hair, brown hair, orange hair. Well, then you've got made in Hong Kong, made in Taiwan, made in, wherever.
I'm talking about a sane collector.
Right. Well, yeah, sane collector, yes. But there are people that have gone out there and they're starting to, hunt down all these just little small variants, and it's actually kind of frustrating, when you think about it, because, yeah, I think, okay, the brown hair and the blonde hair Luke thing, I get that. I've got both. I don't have an orange hair Luke. Somebody offered me one. I said, no thanks. I'm not spending that kind of money on
I don't
something
need a
like
ginger
that.
Luke. No thanks.
Yeah. And, but, and I got my double telescoping Luke, which, I would love to have a double telescoping Kenobi or Vader, but they're, $8 or $9 if you can find one.
Wow. And before we wrap it up, I just want to give a little history lesson on Brian's Star Wars museum. His house. Brian actually purchased from his father the house he grew up in, which is where the museum is located. And as a kid, when I would go to Brian's house, it was the cool, fun house. Because in the basement now, where the museum resides, there was a pool table and an air hockey table. His dad really pimped it out like an arcade almost. And Brian was the first kid I knew who had a 2600. And he's the guy we talked about last year on the podcast who could do the first 2 minutes of Pitfall with his eyes closed and not die. But so, we would play Star Wars at his house for hours and hours, stay up all night playing Star Wars. So it's interesting when I go back to Tennessee to visit family and friends, and I visit Brian's house. It's the only house, the only residence from my childhood that I can still walk into. It's because, my parents have moved 4 or 5 times. My grandparents have passed away. You just don't, the house you grew up in, or houses that you were familiar with as a kid, as you grow up, you really don't see them anymore. But that I can go to Brian's house and it's still this magical, Star Wars place. That to me is almost that's returning home, as a kid. So I've always enjoyed that aspect of it. That I can look around his current museum and say, hey, you remember when we used to, set up Hoth base on top of the air hockey table and all that stuff. So it's a lot of fun for me.
Well, it must be, because we've talked about how Star Wars feels like your home when you watch, especially the original trilogy. So for Jared, Brian, I'd watch out. He might start putting his overnight bag in your house and just move in. With that much Star Wars. And so I'm here, I'm moving in.
Jared's welcome here anytime.
Well, I'm sure Terry would enjoy that occasionally. But yeah, it is to walk into it. You see the little foyer there with the Imperial cog on the floor and the Bespin lighting scheme. He sets the stage really nicely, and then going in and just looking at all the stuff, new and old, that he has on display. It's really amazing to see.
Yeah, these pictures and the videos I've seen are just absolutely amazing. Maybe if I'm lucky someday, I'll be able to journey up to Tennessee and see with my own eyes, because this is unbelievable to see.
Yeah, down to Tennessee, journey down to Tennessee.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I'm in New York.
You're in New York. You're not in Florida anymore.
Yeah.
Hey, anytime. And, Mike's been over here too. He's gotten a little glimpse of it. So.
Yeah, but then you caught me and chased me out with your gun.
Yeah, well,
Who is that?
Seeing collections like this is rare. This is not my world. And to see something like this really brings me back to when I was a kid, because I remember, like we all used to, I remember looking through the service merchandise catalog.
Oh, yeah.
That used to have all the figures set up that you could look at, because we didn't have the internet back then. So this is how we saw our toys, through magazines and newspapers and catalogs. And I would dream about these toys, and I see them now in all these pictures, and it just takes me right back. And Brian, on this podcast, we've discussed Star Wars a lot. We've talked about what movies and what parts of it we like and what it means to us. But why do you think Star Wars is what it is? Why is Star Wars such the phenomenon that it is, that you yourself have devoted quite a bit of your life to celebrate it?
For me, at this age, being in my mid 40s and everything, there's a huge nostalgia effect to it. And growing up on that as a kid, and as a kid, it was really cool to see this universe, this galaxy that was created, and it was just so amazing and so new and fresh, but yet it felt like it was historic. A long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It made you feel like there was history there and that it could have happened. And then, as a kid, it did happen. And that's what really kind of got me sucked into it. It's almost like it did happen. And, at that age, being, I was 6 when I saw Empire at the theater for the first time. And, I saw A New Hope shortly after that, actually. And I learned that stormtroopers talk, but it was, it was just kind of an interesting thing. But, it just captivated my imagination, at that age. And the toys, I had toys before I ever saw a movie. And it was just something special, and it's the story, it's good versus evil. I mean, it gets a little more complicated than that when you get into it and dive deeper, but as a kid, it's good versus evil.
Yeah, it's easy to digest. The good guys from the bad guys.
Exactly.
There's no gray.
No. It's just it was just absolutely amazing.
Very well said, sir. So, anyway, we're going to be putting some pictures up on social media so you guys can have some. This will be an interactive episode. It has pictures with it. Thanks for talking to us today, and
Brian, thanks for sharing this amazing collection. This is outrageous. This is taking me back, to my childhood. Just staring through. I'm going to look at these pictures tonight when we're off this podcast. But congratulations. This is an amazing amount of work, amazing collection, and it's just not a bunch of stuff thrown together. It looks like a museum. When you see the pictures, you'll understand the level of care and love he's given this collection. It's spectacular.
So please, if you score something amazing, let us know, and we'll have you on the show to talk about it.
Oh yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It's been great talking about collecting, and we could talk about this for hours. And anytime you want me on, just let me know, and we'll talk some more.
All right. Well, thank you, Brian.
Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Kenner's Star Wars X-Wing fighter, TIE fighter, and action figures all sold separately.
Well, that was fantastic. I can't thank your friend Brian enough for coming on here and sharing that. That was really, really fantastic.
It's fun to talk about. And
I tell you what really surprised me about that was I was thinking, we had mentioned it kind of earlier, like that can be a rabbit hole that you go down, the collecting, the obsession of it. But he approaches it very smart. And I liked how he manages his collection through growing it, through getting, he pieces out some of it to make it bigger here and there.
Well, yeah, the fact that it kind of sustains itself.
Yeah, that it's interesting to me. It's a fascinating world, but he's a really neat guy, and his collection is world class. And if it's not one of the biggest in the Southeast, then
I think
it's got a rank in the country somewhere.
I think you can say it's safely top 10 in the Southeast. But anyway, we are coming up on the end of season 2, guys. It is close.
That's right.
Next week will be the season finale. And we'll be taking a little time off this summer. You got to come back next week, and we'll finish out season 2 with something that's probably going to blow your mind, or it may just mildly entertain you. It's one of those. Yeah, so come back next week, and we're approaching the finish line here, so you don't want to miss it.
You can't live without this content, so subscribe to the Hyperspace Podcasting in the 25th Century. Follow us on social media, leave us a review, and join us next time as we take you into the 25th century.